Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Maybe a couple of people can just put a note in the chat to say that you can hear me. That will be fantastic. So we're going to start today slightly differently. Before I hand over to Dan, I want to ask everybody on the webinar if you can just put a little note in the chat and answer this question. The question I want answering is, what's your biggest recruitment challenge right now? What's your biggest recruitment challenge right now? So if you can just put a sentence or two in the chat, I would really appreciate it, because we want to find out what your biggest challenge are, and obviously it shows you're listening as well. So put that note in the chat. What's your biggest recruitment challenge? And we'll come back to that in a second. In the meantime, in time-honoured tradition, Dan, let's do some housekeeping, if that's okay.
Sure thing. So, hi, I'm Dan. I'm 50% glamorous assistant, 50% technical issue fixer, which is quite scary. So if our sound or video cuts out, let us know, and I'll twist a few dials my end, or I don't know, turn something off and on again. So I see a lot of familiar faces in the attendees list, so you'll know how this all works. But for the new faces in the crowd, we like lots of engagement and input. So we can't see or hear you. So the chat function and the Q&A box just at the bottom of the screen is absolutely your friend. So to ask questions or give comments, you can use either the Q&A box or the chat function. I'll be monitoring both and reading them out at regular intervals as we go along. I mean, recruitment's a tricky one for any business, right? So don't hold back. We all are facing the same problems and challenges. So even if it's not a question, but just sharing a story with a message we can all learn from, let's hear it. If you're thinking it, somebody else is too. So don't worry, there's absolutely no such thing as a silly question or suggestion. The same goes too if your experience differs from something that Phil is talking about. Challenge us on our thinking. We don't have all the answers, but we can absolutely find out for you and all learn together. Lastly, we're recording this webinar, so a copy will be sent out later today. Or in the follow-up email, we have the recording, we have any notes of resources and assets and things that Phil mentions. Yardstick's own Abby Robinson is in the audience too. She's furiously jotting down everything that Phil mentions. So if you miss anything, don't worry, Abby has absolutely got you covered. And I'm going to put a link to a short survey in the chat. So if I just do that now, if everybody could fill that in, we'd be most grateful, because it means that we can then tailor these webinars to include subjects that A, you're interested in, B, are relevant, and C, are going to help you. So we can make these webinar series as useful as possible for you. So fill it in, give your input. We love running them, so tell us what you want, and we'll absolutely make it happen. Well, within reason, I guess. It has to be something somewhat linked to financial services and marketing, but you get the idea. So on that note, let's get into it. Phil, how can you market fast track recruitment?
Right, let's answer that question in a second. Let's look at some of people's challenges. So thank you for everyone putting these in. What have we got on here? And let's start sharing a few things. So Simon, recruiting financial advisors, that's your biggest challenge. Mark, recruiting a new financial planner. Kevin, knowing where to begin. Well, hopefully we have a few hints and tips on that today. Finding the right skill set, Chopin. Lloyd, what have we got here? Location and finding the right candidates. Finding the right people, good candidates for Nicola that fit the company culture. That's really important, isn't it? What else? Attracting candidates for admin and financial planner roles. So I think that's the first mention that we've had of ad. But from what I hear when I talk to business owners, that finding good administrators and good power planners is equally as challenging as finding good advisors. Gemma, lack of candidates who meet the profile. Kelly, finding candidates. David, finding the right people and also salary expectations. Finding good quality advisors from Gary, lack of applications. So there's definitely a theme here, isn't there? Just the number of applications and finding good quality people. But then we've got from Hannah and also from Sarah, candidates signing contracts and then falling through, candidates agreeing to join, then stay in their current role after they're promised the world by their current employer and a big pay rise. Now, we've not actually got anything in this webinar to deal with those two issues. So give that some thought, give those two things some thought, if you would, everybody on this webinar, and then perhaps together we can collectively help Hannah and Sarah out later on. And as a reminder, their specific issues are candidates agreeing to the role, then falling through. Back to these, Mark, distinct lack of quality candidates. Dave, attracting chartered financial planners who can work with professional connections. Olivia, finding good quality candidates for admin roles that have sufficient experience, realistic expectations. Kelly, how to operate knowing that every day multiple recruiters are trying to recruit your team on LinkedIn. So I've got some thoughts on that, and we'll come back to that one later. Dan, perhaps if I don't do that one during the presentation, you can remind me and we'll cover that one off at the end.
Yeah, sure thing.
So there's clearly a couple of themes there. We've got the question about how you make sure that candidates who agree to join you get over the line. So if we give that some thought while we're presenting. And obviously, for most people, it's about finding the right number of good quality candidates for advisor, planner, admin, and power planning roles. Those seem to be the main issues. So hopefully we can give you some practical hints, tips, and ideas today. So what are we going to talk about? So we're going to, the theme through this is 10 key marketing tactics that will help you recruit the right people. This isn't thought leadership stuff today. This is really practical things that you can do and go away and implement in your business this afternoon if you've got nothing else to do. Things that can make a difference immediately. We're going to talk about 3 ways to use LinkedIn to solve your recruitment challenges. We're going to talk about Glassdoor. We had an interesting experience with Glassdoor, which we'll recount to you. And we're going to talk about what it is and how you can use it to your advantage. Then we're going to talk about the changes you might need to make to your website if you're recruiting, how to write a great job description. So Kevin, you started, you asked about knowing the place to start. Well, for me, the first place to start is to write a great job description. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about how to impress potential candidates. So it's you that they apply to and they don't look elsewhere. But as Dan said, this is based on our lived experience. So 5 years ago, it was myself, Dan, and Michael sat in a little broom cupboard in Nottingham, and there are now 40 of us. And we've taken some missteps when it comes to recruitment, but we're working out now what works for us, both in terms of getting the right people culturally, but also getting the right stream of candidates. We don't get it right all the time by any stretch, but this is our lived experience. And it's also based on what we see working for us, but working for other advisors and planners as well. So do question, do comment, and do challenge. We always say that, but do add to the debate as well. If you've tried something that's different and you feel that it would actually be useful to tell the whole group, then please do share it. I do really want today to be a debate so that we all leave, including Dan, myself, and Abby, with new information and new things that we can go away and implement in our businesses. So let's start by identifying the problem. So there is clearly, and what everyone has said on the chat, there is clearly a supply and demand issue. There is significantly more demand at the moment for advisors, planners, power planners, and admin staff than there is supply. Clearly more demand than supply. We also, I think, have faced, we get more discerning candidates. And we certainly see that. But we see candidates being more discerning about who they work for, maybe wanting different benefit packages, different things than they did 2 or 3 years ago. And of course, we've got that changing work environment. I've been doing this webinar 2.5, 3 years ago. We'd have had an office full of 25 people behind us. There's still 10 people in today, but we're all working very differently, aren't we? And I don't know what people's experience on this webinar is, but what are you getting, and maybe put something in the chat and we can come back to that, but what are you getting your candidates, or what are candidates saying to you about where they want to work? Do they want to work in the office? Do they want to work permanently from home? Do they want a hybrid? And how easy is it for you to give them what they're looking for? So maybe put a few comments in the chat around that, because I'd love to know what people are saying there. But we do have that changing work environment, and that's led to what people have coined the Great Resignation, which is a large proportion of people wanting to change jobs. And then we've got that sheer volume of noise. For various reasons, I log into Advisor and Planner's LinkedIn accounts from time to time, mostly for us to post on their behalf. And their messages, they're absolutely full of spam, but also messages from recruitment consultants, asking them if they're looking to move. And you've got just a huge volume of noise from both employers and employees at the moment. And I do think that a lot of firms, and we were guilty of this for 2 or 3 years, a lot of firms work reactively. So they're not proactively doing things to position themselves well from a recruitment perspective. And they're not permanently doing that. They only start looking when they need. And what we're going to talk about today is a bunch of things you can be doing all the time and just be permanently on with, so that you don't suddenly start marketing when you actually need somebody. You're more proactive and less reactive. So for me, the solution is to develop a recruitment strategy. And as the slide says, we talk to clients a lot about their client acquisition strategy, writing marketing plans to help them acquire new clients. But you absolutely should also have a marketing plan, a marketing strategy that helps you recruit. You probably need fewer recruits than you will new clients, but you absolutely should have 2 strategies, one for client acquisition, one for recruitment. And then you need to give the strategy enough time and resources to implement it efficiently. And as I said before, you absolutely also need to be working on your recruitment, even when you don't have any vacancies, because that groundwork that you put in when you don't have vacancies will absolutely pay dividends when you do. It's a little bit like that old analogy. When you're really busy with client work and new clients coming on board, that's the very last time you should stop marketing your business. Because when that busyness, when that subsides and you do have more capacity for taking on new clients, you can't suddenly start marketing and turn on the tap. Well, the same is true with recruitment. So develop 2 strategies, one for client acquisition, one for recruitment. And in the same way that your client acquisition strategy should start by building the foundations and then looking at tactics to generate prospects, you should do exactly the same when it comes to recruitment. Build solid foundations for your recruitment strategy and then use tactics to generate prospects. Of course, in this case, it's not prospects of clients, it's prospects to come and work with you. Dan, I've seen a couple of things go through the chat.
Yeah, so we've had some comments come through, and it's a very mixed feeling and mixed opinions about hybrid working. So Elaine mentions that they did an employee engagement process, and from this they now have in place hybrid working. Dave says hybrid is very easy to accommodate if you've got the right people, IT and comms in place. But then we've got Kelly saying that hybrid working is a must for candidates. However, it impacts on the new team members and the support they can access. So in their experience, it's not as positive as it perhaps was historically. And Simon backs this up by saying for him, we're hybrid and keen to be hybrid, but we find it's harder to build a culture.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It is harder to build a culture. It's something that we've worked on really hard over the past 2.5 years. And it is incredibly hard. I think you can do it, but it is, I have a lot of sympathy for that. It is very, very hard. So if the solution is to develop a strategy, where do we start? So let's dig into the practical stuff. So first of all, for me, this all starts with writing a great job advert. Now, we need to understand that your job advert is different to your job description or your job spec. Description and spec are probably more technical in nature, but your advert it's what sells this role. And because we have this imbalance, this supply-demand imbalance, we need to get our heads around the fact that we have to sell this role, whatever the role you're recruiting for, power planner, admin, advisor, financial planner, we have to sell this role to get a stream of the right candidates. So for me, If you're developing a marketing strategy to acquire new clients, you should start by developing a client persona. And the same is true when it comes to recruitment. So develop what I would call your dream candidate persona. Yeah. So what do these people look like? What's their background? What are their qualifications? What are their motivations? What keeps them awake at night? Most importantly, what gets them out of bed in the morning? And hopefully that's coming to work for you. Where do they want to work? What's the balance that they want between office and remote working? What compensation package? What motivates them in terms of compensation package? Career growth. Just build, for each of your job roles, build that dream candidate persona. Really important that we start there. In the same way, it's really important that we start there when we're marketing your business to attract new clients. Then we need to write the job advert. Now, your advert, as I say, it shouldn't be just a copy and paste of the job spec or very technical in nature. It should absolutely impress, attract, and excite your ideal candidate. And you get that through with the language. And I think you also, through the language, you can ensure that your culture and your business's personality shines through. Be passionate and have just energy flowing through the advert. You're selling your business, you're selling your role to the ideal candidate, that dream candidate that we talked about. So it's essential that your advert does all those things. And you can do it, as I say, through language, but you can also do it through adding in testimonials from existing team members, staff survey results, even staff videos. We'll come and talk about that in a bit. But your advert, it isn't I've seen some terrible adverts as we've been writing this webinar, and I've seen some really good ones. And the really good ones do inspire, they motivate, and they're not technical briefs. Yeah, they are a sales job. And we also need to give in the advert what candidates want to see. So 80% of them want a detailed role description. They want to know what they're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. 65% want to know what the requirements of the role are, the skills and characteristics of the ideal candidate, and 61 want compensation and benefits information. So this is really interesting. We've tried this both ways, and I'm not sure we've necessarily got an answer on this. So in some of our job adverts, and we tend to advertise our roles on our website, on LinkedIn, and on Indeed, we tend to advertise our roles on those three places, and sometimes we'll put a salary range on there, and other times we won't. And I've not necessarily got to a definitive answer on this. So really interested to hear what other people are doing. So if maybe you could put something in the chat now, and we'll come back to it in a second. Just thinking about the last couple of roles you advertised. Did you put a specific salary, no salary, or a salary range? So the last few jobs, did you put a specific salary, no salary, or a salary range? And we'll come back to that in a minute. But your advert, apart from being a passionate, energetic sale of your business and the role, those are three specific things that candidates want to see. And when you're writing your job description, you've got to include all these things. Personally, I would probably put them in this order, but you can mix it up yourself. But I do think you need all of them in here. So the first thing is an accurate job title. Really important that you do that. One of the mistakes we made is we advertised for a client success executive. It's a title that we use internally and with our clients. We currently have 3 people in that role, Ryan, Ellie, and B. The mistake we made is we advertised for a client success executive, thinking that everybody knew what it was. And we just got tumbleweed. We got no responses at all. When we changed it to marketing executive, which is a more widely known title, we got loads of responses. So really important to use an accurate job title. Then list the key skills, attributes, and characteristics of the ideal candidate. So that's coming back to your dream candidate persona that you created. Really important that you put a description of the business there. And that's your opportunity to get your culture across. It's incredibly important, I think more important than it ever has been, that cultural fit between employee and employer is right, especially in the world of hybrid or remote working. So really important you get that across, and it's a great opportunity to be energetic, to be passionate about your business. Talk about the responsibilities of the role. Again, that's because candidates want it. Location, that's your opportunity to talk about whether you're offering hybrid working, office working, etc., etc. Benefits package. As I said before, we list all the benefits that we offer, from salary range on some of the jobs right the way through to our Friday Kudos prize that we award every Friday to an employee. And then what you want them to do to apply. So we generally ask for covering letter, CV, and examples of their work, especially if it's the content team, the digital team, or Dan's branding team. You know what? We rarely get it. And it's a great filter because that's in at the start, that request is at the start of the advert and the bottom of the advert. But we rarely get it. And it really is a great, great filter. Abby won't mind me saying that when Abby joined us back in January, the thing that led me to Abby's application was just the quality of it, the covering letter, the portfolio of her work. Abby had even gone to the extent of using Yardstick's brand colours in the portfolio of her work. It was just so impressive, and really, really stood out for a role that we probably had 300 applicants for. So those are all the things that I would recommend including in the job spec, the job advert, not the job spec, the job advert. And we also need to think about how it's written as well. Really important for me that it's written in the first person, I, we, you, etc. Avoid phrases like the successful candidate will. So write in the first person, be clear to the point, be really succinct. Use subheadings, use short sentences and paragraphs to be clear and to the point. And then use subheadings as well. The subheadings are massively important because if people are scanning the job advert and don't necessarily read all the content, you can use your subheadings to make your killer points around package, the culture of the business, the role, etc. But subheadings are massively, massively important. And Nick Parkhouse, our head of content, has written a brilliant article a while ago on the use of subheadings. And Abby, we can put that in the follow-up if that's okay. And then use bullet points as well, because people will scan read. We all scan read online these days. We don't read online how we do the printed word. So write in the first person, be clear and to the point, using short sentences and short paragraphs. And then subheadings to make your key points stand out, and bullet points as well to make your key points stand out. Now, we are absolutely not perfect, but if you want to go and have a look at our the job adverts that we've got live at the moment, I actually think we've only got one. Go and have a look at our website and see what we've done there. That job advert has been changed a bit over the years. I think Dan wrote the original version, and Nick, our head of content, has changed a few bits. Abby's changed a few bits. I've changed a few bits. There's still more we can do with it, but hopefully it shows you how the personality of our business shines through. And we have had compliments from candidates on our job advert. So hopefully that shows you the things you should be including, the things people are looking for, the list of things to work through when you're writing your job advert, how to use language, but most importantly, start with that dream candidate persona. Dan, I've seen some stuff through on the chat. Do you want to dive in there?
Absolutely. So to begin, the question was asked, wasn't it? What's the usual salary information shown? And overwhelmingly, it's a range. So 90+% have said salary range. A few have said no salary. And Kevin asks a great question, saying that surely showing a range means that people instantly want the top of that range. Yeah?
That's a good point. So when we've put a range on and we offer a position, we will explain why we are offering the point on that range that we are offering. And it's not been a problem for us. I can't immediately think of a candidate that hasn't come to us because of the salary being paid or where there's been significant negotiations. So far that's not been a problem for us, but we're not putting a salary range on every job advert. Perhaps others who are can comment on that from Kevin's point.
Yeah, a few people have said that they say salary will be competitive because it completely depends on the person, what they bring, etc. So that's something that people have been using quite a lot. Mark asks a brilliant question related to the slide that's currently on the screen. What's the ideal advert length? There seems to be a lot to include.
That's a really good question, and it goes back to being clear and to the point. I think you can do that I think you can include those things, but it's not easy to write. It's not easy to write something that's short and succinct. So I would suggest you can probably get. I would suggest you can probably get all those things in maybe 600 words, 700 words. But that's why it's so important to break it up with bullet points, short sentences, short paragraphs, and subheadings. Because 700 words can look beautifully laid out and really easy to read if you're using those short sentences, bullet points, and subheadings. If you don't use any of those, it can just look like a massive off-putting text. So you can sort of sliding doors moment, same 700 words, can be really easy to read or really difficult to digest. So that's the first thing, write a great job advert. And Kevin, when you put in the chat earlier, that's the starting point. Number two, once you've got the job advert, we need to get your website right because candidates are going to be looking at your website. And for us, that means that you add a careers or join us page. Even if you're only looking for one person, I do think it's important to add a careers or a join us page to your website. Display all your current roles. So if you are looking for an advisor, a planner, and a power planner, then each of them should have their own page. Each of them should have their own page, but you would have all three on one. So click here if you want to look at the advisor role, click here if you want to look at the power planner role, click here if you want to look at the admin role. And then clearly when they click on that, they go through to a page which has got the job advert on there. So display all your current roles and put a child page on there for each job advert, each job that you've got open. Now, if you don't have any jobs open, I would still have your careers and join us page live, but I would have a message on there that says something to the effect of, we're always looking for good people. If you are looking for a new challenge, if you've got experience in financial services or whatever you're looking for, then please do reach out to us. Please do send an email. We're always looking to hear from good quality candidates. And that's a really good example of where you can be permanently switched on to recruitment, as opposed to just turning on when a job vacancy becomes live. So just putting that, we're always looking for good people message. We don't have any vacancies right now, but you never know what might happen if you get in touch. You might encourage a few speculative CVs there. And then make the job page easy to find. So put it in the main navigation of your website. Make it really easy for candidates to find. And also, I'd link to it from your team page. So let's say you've got pictures of your team, as I don't know, 5 of you in the team, and you've got pictures of you all on the team page. Then I'd put a 6th person on there, little silhouette. Join us, question mark underneath it. Is this you, question mark? Are we looking for each other, question mark? Something along those lines. Just because you might get candidates, rather than going to the careers or join us page, they might have gone to the team page. So there are a few things that you can do on your website, as I say, to make it easy for candidates to find the roles that you are currently advertising. And then, because we have this this disconnect between supply and demand, this supply and demand issue, we've got to get our heads around the fact that we need to impress potential candidates in the same way that we might be trying to impress potential clients. So we talk a lot at Yardstick about social proof, thoughts and words of others to demonstrate the value that you add. And we generally talk about it in the context of acquiring new clients. But for me, it applies absolutely equally to prospective candidates, people who are coming to work for you. And that's because they will check you out online before applying. If someone is thinking of moving, and they're applying for a power planning role with company A and a power planning role with company B, company A's got 1 Google review, it's 1 star, and it's not particularly good. Company B has got 60 Google reviews, they're really, really positive, which is going to give them a better first impression of the business. And as I say, we've got to reframe this and sell you, your business, and the role to potential candidates. So, as I say, candidates will check you online before applying because I think there's 3 reasons. To understand whether they want to work for you or not, to help them with their application, and then to prepare for an interview. So I think there's 3 reasons there why candidates will be looking at you online. And they will be equally impressed as prospective clients will be by your client-driven social proof. So that means online ratings and reviews, Google and vouched for, publishing your client survey results, that will set you apart from most of your peers and competitors. And videos of your clients, again, they set you apart as well. Your clients talking about the value they deliver will motivate potential candidates. So we talk a lot about social proof. Who knows, we might do some webinars later on in the year about it. So I won't talk too much more about that right now, but just remember that social proof, as much as it's important for new clients, it's important for potential recruits. And then we can also have social proof that's driven by your team, other people within your business. And that's because candidates want to understand what it's like to work for you. They want to understand the culture. They want to understand what other people think about the workplace. And when we're on interviews, and we're interviewing potential candidates, and you get to that stage in the interview when you hand it over to them and you ask them about what questions have you got for us? One of the things we're finding now is that first question is very often about culture, about the culture of the business, and how they might fit in. And it's something that's becoming more and more important to people. So candidates want to understand what it's like to work for you. And I think for us, there's 3 ways of doing this. First is using something like Glassdoor. So Glassdoor is an online rating and review platform where existing employees and former employees can go and leave a review for their employer or their former employer, and it's all anonymous. And you know what? They can go on and do it even if you don't have a Glassdoor profile. So we had an interesting early experience of this. We had a former employee, I'm assuming it's not a fake review, but we had a former employee go and leave a negative review about us on there. This was about, I'm guessing, about 8 months ago, wasn't it, Dan? And it was only a couple of lines. We haven't even been able to narrow it down to the person we think it is. There's probably 3 or 4 people who had left us during the first lockdown because we had a little bit of a clear out. And it shook us a little bit. Nobody liked to think there was something negative about us, especially when our team member survey, which we'll come to in a minute, showed really positive, very positive net promoter score and some really positive feedback. And we knew that this negative review might impact on our ability to recruit and attract really good quality people. So first thing we did was reach out to members of our team and ask them to go and leave reviews themselves on Glassdoor. We didn't give them any indication of what we wanted them to say. We just gave them the link and said, would you mind going to leave us a review? And what we found is we got a really load of positive feedback. We got a few things that we can work on, but what we've now got is a far more authentic footprint of reviews. Rather than just that one negative one, we've got a far more authentic footprint of reviews from the team, which absolutely, I think, demonstrate the culture of what it's like to work at the Yardstick agency. So flipping that around, what can you learn from that? First thing is get ahead of the game. Yeah, don't be in the position that we were in. We preach about Google reviews of getting ahead of the game. So make sure you get ahead of the game by getting your team members, maybe one a week, depending on the size of your team, to go and leave you a review on Glassdoor. And I wouldn't give them any direction. I would simply go and ask them to leave you that review. And you might ask some former employees as well to leave you that review. And what you'll find, hopefully, is you'll get a similar, really authentic footprint as we did. You might learn a few things that you can improve on. But when a candidate looks at it, they will start to learn about the culture in your business. The next thing I would do is we do an annual team member survey. And again, depending on the size of your business, clearly if you've only got 2 or 3 employees, it might be a bit of overkill to do a survey. But we do an annual team member survey where we do a Net Promoter Score and ask a series of questions. And that's incredibly useful. It helps us see where there's any issues we need to work on. It shows us what we need to stop doing, what we need to start doing, what we need to improve. But it also gives us some great stats and feedback and testimonials that we can use in marketing. And finally, videos, team member videos. We'll come to those on the next slide. But for me, team member videos really incredibly important when it shows to showing off the culture of working in your business. So Dan, any questions?
Right, so a few things. One question that I think we'll come to a little bit later on in the presentation is from David, who asks, what about financially incentivizing the team to introduce candidates? And I know you'll speak about that a bit later on, so we'll pick that up a bit later down the line. But a great question in from Rebecca in the meantime, who asks, should you tailor the advert to the platform you're advertising on, such as LinkedIn, or is the advert style that we've suggested a few slides previous suitable for all?
I think the advert style is suitable for all. So when you are adding your advert to LinkedIn or Indeed or on your website, you on LinkedIn and Indeed and your website, you're faced with kind of a block where you can copy and paste the text in and format it, etc. So for me, I think it's suitable for all. The only caveat to that is any formatting that you can or cannot add on the different platforms.
Brilliant. And yeah, that's it for now. Let's move on.
Let's move on to videos. So very few firms do this. I can think of a tiny handful of firms that do this. Or at least in terms of employees. So clients are often now appearing on videos on behalf of their advisor or planner, talking about their story, talking about the benefits of working with a planner, the value of working for them. But as I say, we very rarely see this. You can count on the fingers of one hand the number of times I've seen it, where the employer is getting their team members on video to talk about what it's like to work at the name of the firm. And for me, I'd probably be asking 3 things on video. What's the best thing about working at? Would you recommend working at? How would you describe the culture at? And there's other questions you can add in, but there's 3 to start with. And for me, the videos, they create an immediate first impression, a really positive first impression, and they create an immediate connection, far more than text does. They're relatively easy to produce these days. You could get someone to come into the office, or you could record them on the studio in your pocket, otherwise known as a mobile phone. Editing is relatively straightforward these days. You can do it yourself. You can come to your local friendly specialist agency. And there's an example on here. Go and have a look at Henwood Court's video after this webinar. We recorded that just before Christmas. Their staff were brilliant. We've got maybe 5 individual videos from members of their staff. And then we edited them together into one video. So for me, getting those videos recorded would be a real step forward for a lot of firms. But of course, once you've produced the content, you've then got to promote it. So where would we use it? I think you can put the videos on your careers page on your website. And let's say, for example, you were big enough to do this. Let's say you've got a power planner advert and a planner advert and an administrator advert. Then why not on those adverts on your website have an administrator talking about what it's like to work there, answering those 3 questions, an advisor or planner doing the same, and a power planner doing the same. And that will set you apart massively because almost nobody is doing this. So use the videos on your website careers page, use them on your job adverts pages if you can, use them on your social posts. If you're posting your jobs, and we'll talk about that in a minute, if you're posting your jobs on social media, then really powerful. Post, link to the job, and then a video. What's it like to work here? Well, don't let the boss tell you. Hear from one of our employees. I think that's really, really powerful. And then your LinkedIn profile as well. There's all sorts of ways of using video on LinkedIn. We wrote a blog about that maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago. Abby, if we can put that in the follow-up, that would be great as well. So use video, record it, and then produce it, and then promote it. Then some of the firms that I see successfully recruit spend a lot of time building their profile in the profession. And this is something that they are frequently on with. They understand the benefits of building their profile in the profession and understand that actually one of those benefits is potentially making it easier for recruitment. So how do you build your profile in the profession? Awards. I think entering awards, being shortlisted for awards and winning awards help raise your profile in the profession. Not only because the awarding body, professional advisor, money marketing, the PFS, etc., will promote your shortlisting and hopefully you'll win, but you can promote it as well. And during that awards journey, from entry to shortlist to the event to winning, there's just so many points that you can promote along the way. It really does have a significant benefit because it raises your profile within the profession. And of course, if you are shortlisted or you win, it shows the quality of your work. And in a market where supply or demand is outstripping supply, then showing the quality of your work partly through awards, I think is a really good thing to do. Press coverage helps raise your profile as well. So press coverage in the personal finance press and the trade press really does help raise your profile. Personal finance press has never been easier. Things like Newspage, for those who have used Newspage, again, we'll put the link in the show notes, the follow-up notes. But Newspage is doing a great job getting smaller financial planning, financial advice firms who don't have a PR budget, getting them coverage in the personal finance press. And the trade press is relatively easier to get coverage in. But again, your coverage in the personal finance press, the trade press, raises your profile. It's a brand amplifier, and it shows that you are a forward-looking firm. I think speaking at events helps. If potential recruits see you speaking at an event, it creates a bit of a connection, but again, it raises your profile. It shows the type of person you are, shows whether they would want to potentially come and work for you. So I think speaking at events is tremendously important. Supporting the advice and planning community and developing that reputation for giving back. Again, it's about raising profile, but also showing your culture and your business's culture. So those are 3 or 4 things that you can be always on with, you can be permanently doing. They will all have benefits for your business, especially when it comes to recruitment. And there's some people on this call that are tremendous at it. I think I might have seen Sarah at Berry and Oak. I hope she won't mind me saying, but I think what Sarah and Andrew do at Berry and Oak absolutely ticks a load of these boxes. They do it absolutely brilliantly. So number 7, we said we talk about 3 things to do on LinkedIn, and that's what we're going to talk about now. So for me, the first thing you can do on LinkedIn to actively generate new candidates is to use the paid advert function on there. So you use the job advert you created earlier. Just follow the steps, the stages on LinkedIn, and put your ad on there. But I would always, always, always add a budget. Don't take the free version. I would always add a budget. And we generally add a budget of between £10 and £14 a day, depending on how desperate we are for the candidate and candidates we want to see. One thing I would say is you very much need to see this as a CV harvesting tool that you then need to filter down. So we will use certain filters once we've got the CVs to narrow them down to the candidates that we want to interview. A couple of tips there, as I say, add the budget. Remember to close it down. So Indeed, you can add a end date for the advert. So you don't have to remember to pop back in and close it down. I've not found a way of doing that on LinkedIn. So what you don't want to do is hire the candidate and then realize your job is still running for a month. Not only might that undermine and unnerve the candidate that you have offered the job to, it would also cost you a few quid unnecessarily. So add the budget, but remember to close it down. The other thing I've found is that this has probably got something to do with LinkedIn's algorithms not quite worked out. Why? We tend to find we get the highest number of candidates and the best quality of candidates kind of the first 10 days of the job advert being posted. So we tend to leave it up for maybe a couple of weeks, then take it down for a few days, then put it back up. And what we tend to find is that that seems to push it to the top of LinkedIn's algorithms. And therefore you end up with more candidates by doing that, by putting it up, closing it down, putting it back up, than just leaving it up permanently. One thing to note, you don't need a premium subscription on LinkedIn to be able to pay for the job adverts. And also consider other platforms. So NextGen Planners has a job board. Go and have a look at that. Abby, we can put a link to that in the show notes. I would also potentially try Indeed. And you can split test this. Put your adverts up, put exactly the same advert up on LinkedIn, Indeed, NextGen Planners. See what you get back. And you might find that actually these two job boards are best for advisor planner role. And these two job boards are best for admin roles or power planning roles. And really interested to hear other job boards that people are using on this call successfully. So if there's other job boards that you use, then do put them in the chat. But for me, I would be using those three: LinkedIn, NextGen, and Indeed, and seeing what works. But I'm talking to advisors and planners all the time who are having significant success with recruitment on LinkedIn. And one of the things they're doing is putting paid job adverts on there. Another thing that they're doing is posting natively. Now, posting natively is marketing speak for writing your own post. It is nothing more complicated than that. So I would suggest that you regularly write posts promoting your vacancies. Yeah, we talk a lot about the balance between content production and content promotion. So see your job advert as the production of the content, and see your native posts as the promotion. And like all content promotion, you need to do it more than once. You need to do it regularly because people might have missed the first post. They might not have been looking at that time. You might not have appealed to them at that time. So you've got to publish your posts promoting your jobs. That's not easy to say. You've got to publish your posts promoting your jobs frequently, and do it from your personal account and do it from your corporate accounts as well. Personally, I would probably be posting more from personal, but it depends on the number of connections you've got and how that works. And then once you posted your job advert, post your social proof in the comments. So you've got your job advert, you've got a nice image. Always put the link to your job advert in the comments, not in the body of the post. Happy to explain more about why that's the case, but always put your job advert in the comments. And then next comment below that, start putting some of your social proof in. Yeah, here's John talking about what it's like to work at your firm as a power planner, and post a video. Building it up like that, constructed in the post, I think is really powerful. So post, image, link to the advert, link to social proof, I think works really, really well. And then finally, get your team, if you've got a team, get your team to support your posts by commenting, liking, and sharing through a native post, but not by clicking the share button. So get them to pop in there, leave a comment about how great it is to work for you. Just get them to leave a comment, get them to like it, the old 1-2 of comment and liking. And then encourage them to share as well by writing their own post and linking it back through. And this will actually link back through to one of the incentives we'll talk about in a minute. But they shouldn't click the share button. The share button, bizarrely on LinkedIn's algorithm, actually reduces the number of people to see it. So don't click the share button, get them to write their own posts. And number 9 on LinkedIn, the third of the 3 things on LinkedIn, cold outreach. So this might be a little bit controversial, but cold outreach. So the first thing to do is turn on LinkedIn, the I'm hiring badge. There's 2 little badges. It's kind of a wraparound text on your image. And there's 2 of those badges you can turn on. One is I'm hiring, and one is open to offers or open to work or something like that. Now make sure you select the right badge, otherwise it rather defeats the object. But turn on the I'm hiring badge. Then use the search facility to identify potential candidates. So you could use a search facility to identify financial planners in Bedford, if you were looking for a financial planner in Bedford, power planners in York, and surrounding towns. And create your list of potential candidates. Then view their profile. Go and have a look at their profile, because that does 2 things. First, it demonstrates your interest in them, because LinkedIn will tell them you've looked at their profile. So it shows that you're interested. And of course, by looking at their profile, you'll be able to understand whether they are the right fit for you, whether they're the right candidate, and how much on the face of it they match your dream candidate persona, which you've created in step 1. And then get in touch with them. And one of the things we've seen is that we know that from time to time, we know that cold outreach by recruitment consultants is not always particularly well received by the people that are on the end of it. We also know, through our own experience, and what we've seen others do, is that cold outreach by the actual potential employer is almost never received negatively. I've done this a lot and we've recruited from it, and I have never had a negative response. The worst that happens is I get ignored. Yeah? Which is not great for the ego, but I can live with it. So the absolute worst thing is you get ignored. We don't see negativity. So therefore, cold outreach, I think, can help you go straight to the horse's mouth, straight to potential candidates. And there's 2 ways of doing it when you've worked out your shortlist. The first is you send a connection request with a covering message. And that connection request is limited to 300 characters. And I would use something like this. Hi, really important you personalize it. So, hi Dan, forgive the unsolicited approach. We're looking for a power planner. So I'd like to understand if you're considering a change. If not, please hit delete and forgive the intrusion. But if you're thinking over your options, I'd love to chat. Regards, Phil. Something along those lines. Short, to the point, and with a couple of niceties in there to apologise. And we've used something like that, or a derivative of that, a lot. And you get messages back saying, thanks, it's good to connect, but we're not looking. That's fine, because I've got another connection there of a potential future employee. And one of the things I'm really interested in is building up, and you should be interested in as well, is building up your audience of potential employees on LinkedIn. So if in the future you might want to be recruiting planners, power planners, and administrators, using this cold outreach, will potentially find some low-hanging fruit, people who are interested in now, but will build up your audience of potential future employees. So the first way of doing it is you send a connection request with a covering message. Second way of doing it is if you've got a premium account, and you can argue that it's worth turning on a premium account for the purposes of doing this. You need the business premium, that's about £40 a month. I wouldn't go for the recruiter, it's more expensive. But But when you have a premium account, you get a certain number of in-mails each month. Now, basically, an in-mail is the same as an email, but in the LinkedIn environment. And you get given a certain number of those in-mails each month with a premium membership. You can often get your first month free as a premium member as well. And there's no limit on the number of words in an email, so therefore you can put something a little bit longer, a little bit more detailed in your message. But cold outreach, it genuinely works. Narrow down your shortlist, check them out, compare them to your dream candidate persona, work up a couple of messages, and then send them out. And then obviously reply. It finds low-hanging fruit now, but also helps build up your audience of potential future candidates. So those are the 3 things on LinkedIn: job adverts, posting natively, and cold outreach. And then lastly, recruitment incentives. I don't know if anybody uses these. Be really interested. Put some notes in the chat if you would. But what we do at Yardstick is if a member of our team introduces us to somebody who comes to work for us, we pay £1,000 bonus in however way they want it, providing it's not cash in hand, but whether it's a pension contribution in their salary as a bonus, we pay £1,000 for a successful hire. I think we've probably paid maybe 4 of those out over the years. And what we tend to find is developers have worked with other developers in other agencies. Branding wizards have worked with other branding wizards in other agencies, etc., etc. And the same will be true for yourselves. Your experienced power planners, administrators, advisors will have worked with other people in the past. And it is a really small profession, isn't it? It's quite an insular, quite a small profession, and people know each other. So we've found that £1,000 has been really quite a bit of a motivation for people here, and delighted to pay it out because for 2 reasons really. The first is it's less costly than a recruitment consultant, but I think you're more likely to get the cultural fit right because your employee knows the person they're introducing to you, and the chances are they're not going to introduce somebody that isn't a right fit culturally. So last one, recruitment incentives, give it a go. And that's it. There are the 10 things that we think you can do to improve your recruitment through marketing. I hope that's been of help. We need your help with something. As Dan said earlier, we're building out our webinar program for the second half of 2022. And we want to be presenting you to topics, on topics that are actually of interest to you. So we've developed this little survey. Perhaps, Dan, you can put a link in the chat again, if you've not already done it in the past couple of minutes. And if you can just go on there, onto SurveyMonkey, there's 3 questions on there. That's all there is. And it will really help us to make sure that the webinar program we develop hits the nail on the head in the second half of 2022. So, we're ending on time. I can hear the council house bells in the background in Nottingham. Not ringing on behalf of Nottingham Forest last night, their excellent win. But to say that the time is up. Really happy to stay on the call though, and continue the debate and answer any questions, take anybody's feedback. So really interested to get your questions and find out now what's working for you and what's not. For the people that are still on the call, let's share a few things. What's working and what's not. Dan, what have we got?
Okay, so we spoke a little bit earlier about what are the platforms we might use to form as part of our recruitment efforts. And Elaine mentions that for admin and paraplanner roles, they've used the local college and universities, and the last 2 candidates recruited from there have been outstanding. And Claire says that Facebook for them, they've had more receptive admin applicants rather than LinkedIn, especially for those graduates. They seem to be flocking more to Facebook than LinkedIn. Ben asks a techie question that you may be able to supply a link with, Abby. Where can they find the I'm hiring badge on LinkedIn? It may be hidden behind the menu that you can direct them to.
We'll put a what we'll do there, Ben, is we'll put a screenshot of where you access it in the follow in the show notes. So in the show notes, we'll just put a little screenshot and you can see where it is.
Perfect. A few people are using incentives. Caroline and Charlotte are both using incentives and they get a good amount of recommendations. So there absolutely is something there. And then let's take a look. Okay, so Andrew asks, might be a different topic, which is always good because that goes into ideas for the second half of this year's webinars efforts. But interested to know why sharing directly on LinkedIn is not good, because they do that a lot.
Okay, so the share button on LinkedIn, although it looks nice, warm, cuddly, click it, share it, and it shares with your other your connections. It's actually shown to be far less effective than writing your own post. So far better, don't click the share button because the algorithm doesn't like it, despite LinkedIn putting that there as an option. Don't click the share button, write your own post, add your own image, and then if there's a link to a previous post, put that link in the comments. Just a far better way of doing it. You'll get far more traction that way than clicking the share button, which generally just elicits tumbleweed. Long-winded answer, Andrew. The shorter version is LinkedIn's algorithm prefers native posts rather than sharing.
Yeah, it's all those ways to beat that algorithm, isn't it? It rules all. Okay, we had a question a while back from Kelly that I want to flag because we didn't get to it. So this goes back to when we were doing our staff surveys as opposed to client surveys. Do we think the survey should be anonymous to help honesty, or do we find that people are happy to provide their name to their responses?
Dan, can you remember what we did?
We anonymized ours.
Yeah.
And I think it was important because for our survey, it was very much about remote working, in-office working, a hybrid of both. And we wanted people to really be honest. So we didn't want people to think they couldn't tell the truth. So absolutely anonymous was right for us at that time.
Yeah, it's coming back to me now. We did three things in the survey. We asked about hybrid working, office versus remote. We asked them to vote, give their vote in a net promoter score on a scale of 0 to 10. How likely would you be to recommend working at Yardstick to other people? And then we asked about benefits packages. So one of the things we've always tried to do here as we've been growing is add in something significant extra in the benefits package. So in 2020, we added 5 extra days holiday. And in 2021, we asked the team members what they wanted. And from memory, it was an increased pension contribution and a kind of healthcare cash plan. Interestingly, subsidised financial advice was third, so really quite close. So you never know, we might get there this year. But short answer was we anonymised it.
Yeah, and on that, Sholpan asks whether we can share the questions we asked, just so they can get some insight as to wording.
Yeah, got no problem with that. It might not be right for your business, Sholpan, but happy to share those questions. Again, we'll put those in the show notes.
Okay, Claire asks a good question. Is there a benefit to promoting We Are Hiring on your client-facing newsletter?
I saw that. I don't know. There is the possibility that your clients might be interested. Someone your clients know might be interested, a member of their family. So I think that's a positive. I think you probably got to be careful of just the message. You wouldn't want that message to come across that you're desperate to recruit and because you're struggling operationally. So providing you can craft and write that message in such a way that it might just deal with that nervousness, then yeah, why not? It shows that you're investing in operations, presumably to give a better service, or improve the service, or just to continue delivering a service. You never know, they might know people. I can't see a downside with that. I've talked myself into, from not knowing, I've talked myself into thinking there's not a downside.
Well, that goes hand in hand with what we say at the very start. We don't know all the answers, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
It's a process. So Olivia mentions that for them, verbally sharing the vacancy with select clients works better rather than a blanket approach. And Andrew mentions we did it in a newsletter to clients about a graduate role, and for them, they got great feedback that they were looking to take on students. So yeah, there's a few things there that people can take away.
That's a great angle, and again, speaks to the culture of your business, Andrew.
Okay, so the only other thing outstanding, Alison asked a short while ago because they joined late whether a recording sent out. Absolutely, yes. We'll get a recording plus a follow-up email of any links, notes, things that I suppose came up over the course of the hour that we flag as important. So those are coming to you. But other than that, I can't see anything else. So any more for any more?
I think we're good, aren't we?
I think we are. Yeah. And Olivia mentions, thanks, guys. It's great to know we're all in the same boat. And that's the key thing here, isn't it? It's a challenge that everybody faces. So that's why engagement and input today has been such, a positive thing. So thanks for everybody for their input. It's been brilliant.
Thank you, everybody. Recording out this afternoon with all the links in it. Might be slightly longer than we normally send out. Do please go and complete that survey. It will really help us tailor the webinar program for you next year. And go and enjoy the sun. Looks great out there. See you soon, everybody. See you next month.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.